I always thought I'd die in that house. For over 40 years, I woke up every morning to the familiar creaks of the second-floor hallway. The walls knew me. The floorboards hummed like old friends, especially during the colder months when the woods seemed to breathe with the wind. That house on Pineview Lane wasn't just a shelter. It was a memory, a promise I made to myself and to the woman I loved. Helen and I bought it in the summer of 1979, a modest two-story place with faded white siding and a gnarled oak tree out front. She picked it for the backyard, said she could see our children playing there someday. Back then, we didn't have much. I drove trucks cross-state. She worked part-time at the library and baked for church events on weekends. But that house, that was ours. Helen planted tulips every spring. She painted the living room wall a shade of sunflower yellow she insisted would keep the darkness away in winter. We raised our son Daniel there. I built him a tree house and taught him how to hammer nails without smashing his fingers. In every way that mattered, that house became the backdrop of our lives. When Helen died of lung cancer, the house turned quiet. She passed away in our bedroom, in the same bed we bought together from a discount warehouse when we were still too poor for anything fancier. I remember her last days, morphine dulling her pain, her voice fading like the afternoon light through our bedroom window. I moved a cot next to her side of the bed just to be close. Even when she barely recognized me, she would sometimes squeeze my hand and whisper, "Don't forget this place, don't let it go." After the funeral, people told me to sell it. Too many memories, they said. You'll drive yourself mad, Eugene, and maybe they were right. There were nights I sat in Helen's chair in the living room just to smell her lavender lotion on the fabric. I thought about it, selling, starting over. But every time I reached for a realtor's number, I stopped myself. Daniel, my son, had moved to a nearby city about 45 minutes away. He had a wife, a demanding job, and eventually a son of his own. Connor, my grandson, Daniel didn't visit often. Work got in the way, but after Helen passed, something changed. He began showing up more regularly, sometimes alone, sometimes with Connor in tow, a quiet kid with Helen's hazel eyes and my stubborn jawline. We fished together again, Daniel and I. Just like when he was a boy, I showed him the spots Helen loved to walk to. We repaired the shed, even painted the fence. I started to think maybe, just maybe, I could live out the rest of my life in peace there. But peace doesn't last. Daniel died in a car accident in the middle of winter, a drunk driver, ice on the road. I got the call at 2 a.m. I still remember the way my fingers went numb around the receiver, how I sat in silence after the line went dead. The funeral was a blur. Faces I hadn't seen in years, condolences that tasted hollow, and Connor, 13 years old, suddenly fatherless. Rachel, Daniel's wife, stood beside him like a statue carved from obligation and resentment. We hadn't been close. There was something guarded about her, something always watching for judgment. 6 weeks after Daniel's funeral, my doorbell rang. It was a cold Tuesday morning. I was wearing flannel pajamas and holding a cup of black coffee when I opened the door. Rachel stood there, 2 suitcases by her feet. Connor, pale and quiet, hovered behind her. "We're moving in," she said, just like that. "I can't afford the rent in the city anymore, and Connor needs stability. You're all he has left." She didn't ask. She didn't explain. She just pushed past me with the force of someone who had already made up her mind. I didn't argue, I couldn't. Connor was my blood, and I wasn't about to let him sleep in a car or crash on some friend's couch. The house was too big for one man anyway, too empty. At first it worked. Rachel cooked decent dinners, better than the frozen meals I'd been burning. Connor and I would sit in the den watching baseball. I'd tell him stories about his dad's terrible little league games and how he once broke a window trying to imitate a major league pitch. He laughed sometimes, real, soft laughter that reminded me of Daniel. For a while, I thought maybe this strange version of a family could work. I should have known better. It started slow, a missing photograph, a chair moved without asking. Rachel saying things like, "This house needs a woman's touch," or "Connor needs space that doesn't feel like a museum." I ignored the signs. After all, hadn't Helen said not to let the house go, and wasn't letting go exactly what I was doing, a piece at a time? Looking back, I should have drawn the line earlier. Should have said no the moment the first box of my things was shoved into the attic. But I didn't. I let Rachel settle in, thinking it would help us heal. Instead, it marked the beginning of my erasure. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. It was just a chair, after all. Helen's chair, the green one with the worn-out cushion and sun-faded arms. I came home from a morning fishing trip with my buddy Wayne to find it gone. The spot where it always sat, across from the TV, right near the lamp she loved, was empty, like something had been scooped out of the room. "Where's the chair?" I asked, confused. Rachel peeked out from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "Oh, that old thing. I gave it to a donation center. It was falling apart. I ordered a new sofa. It'll be here next week." My stomach dropped. "You gave it away?" "It was time, Eugene. That thing was from another century. You deserve a living room that doesn't look like a time capsule." I didn't argue. I should have. But instead I stood there, soaked from rain, holding a tackle box, and nodded like a fool. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it creaked slowly above me, my mind racing with what I should have said. Helen had spent years curled up in that chair with a book or a crossword. She used to fall asleep there during thunderstorms because she said it made her feel grounded. Now it was probably sitting in some second-hand shop, labeled vintage, for $20. From that moment on, the changes didn't stop. The old pictures of Helen and me gone. One by one, they vanished from the mantel, the hallway, the staircase. In their place appeared frames of Rachel and Connor at school plays, or posed smiling beside a pumpkin patch. I didn't mind the new photos. I loved my grandson. But the silence that followed the disappearance of my past felt like mourning all over again. Then came the paint. "This cream color is so dated," Rachel said one afternoon, holding up swatches. I was thinking mint green for the living room, and maybe something bolder for the kitchen, a slate gray. I shrugged. I didn't care about paint, but I did care when I walked into the house and barely recognized it anymore. She replaced the curtains, the rugs, the silverware. She bought a new microwave and moved all my mugs to the back of the cabinet. I told myself I didn't want to be petty, that a house should evolve with its people. But that's just it, the house wasn't evolving, it was being replaced. By the end of the first year, I felt like a visitor. There were still corners that held me: my bedroom, the old toolshed out back, the fishing pole in the garage. But the rest of the place, it was Rachel's now. She moved in like ivy, slow, persistent, wrapping around every beam until the original wood was gone beneath the green. "Eugene, I've been thinking," she said one night over dinner. "Your bedroom furniture is, let's say, vintage. Maybe we could get you something new, something more practical. That dresser looks like it might collapse." I put down my fork. "No." She blinked. "No. No, Rachel, my room stays the way it is." Her lips tightened. She forced a smile. "Okay, just thought I'd offer." But I saw it in her eyes, the frustration, the simmering edge. That was the first time I'd said no, and something shifted after that. Connor, for his part, stayed quiet. He was 14 now, taller, more withdrawn. He spent a lot of time in his room playing games or doing homework. We still had moments, watching the twins on TV, joking about his bad haircut, but I could tell he felt the tension too. He walked on eggshells around his mom, and lately, around me too. The worst part, Rachel started acting like I was the guest. If I left a coffee mug on the table, she sighed. If I forgot to take off my shoes, she huffed and mopped the floor behind me like I was some bum off the street. Then came the morning that changed everything. I woke to the sound of drilling. Loud, mechanical, angry. Still in my pajamas, I stumbled downstairs to find a stranger installing a flat-screen TV on the wall that used to hold Helen's wedding photo. "What's going on here?" I asked. Rachel, in yoga pants and a messy bun, strolled in with a coffee mug. "Morning, this is Jake. He's putting up the new TV. Our old one was practically an antique." I looked at the box in the corner, my old fat-screen TV. It still worked. I watched the news on it every morning. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job. "We didn't discuss this," I said flatly. "I wanted it to be a surprise," she chirped. "Connor's been wanting this for ages." "It's not about the TV," I said, my voice rising. "It's about the fact you didn't ask." Jake paused mid-drill, clearly uncomfortable. Rachel's face shifted. "No more chirpy. I've lived here for 2 years, Eugene. I'm making this house livable for Connor, for me. I've been patient, but you act like it's still 1985 in here." I stared at her, breath tight. "This is still my house." She laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh. "Is it?" She stepped close, too close. "Look around. Do you really think this is still your home? Or are you just squatting in the shell of a memory, too scared to admit it's all over?" That night, I sat outside on the porch until the sky turned pink and the birds began to stir. The bench beneath me was one I built with my own hands 30 years ago. And for the first time, I felt like maybe she was right. Maybe it wasn't my home anymore. The thing about being erased is that it doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's a missing chair, a repainted wall, a box of your things put away for space. But one day you wake up and realize that your life, your memories, have been pushed into the corners like clutter no one wants to deal with. The living room used to smell like old books and pine cleaner. Now it smelled like Rachel's vanilla candles and some synthetic lavender spray she used on the couch. I couldn't find anything in the kitchen drawers anymore. She'd moved all the utensils, bought new plates, swapped out the mugs Helen had collected over the years for sleek, white, soulless ones. But I kept silent. For Connor's sake, I told myself, for peace, until the line was crossed. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just gotten back from the bowling club, my one weekly escape, when I noticed something missing from the hallway closet. Several jackets, a pair of snow boots, a hat Helen had knitted for me when Reagan was still president. Gone. I opened every closet door in the house, searching. Nothing. "Rachel," I called from the hallway. She appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel like always. "What happened to my coats?" She looked surprised for a moment, then shrugged. "I donated them." "You what?" "They were just gathering dust, Eugene. Connor needed space for his winter gear and sports equipment. There's no room in his room. You haven't worn those coats in years." I stood frozen, my voice caught in my throat. "That wasn't your decision to make." "Look," she sighed, "I'm trying to make this place livable. You can't cling to every piece of junk like it's sacred." Sacred. That's what she called the pieces of my past. Junk. That night, I stayed out in the shed long after sunset, pretending to organize my tools, but really just avoiding the house. I stared at an old wrench in my hand and wondered when my home had turned into someone else's project. Rachel's control didn't stop inside. She began planning renovations for the backyard too, the garden Helen had planted, the gazebo I built with my own hands, even the birdhouse Connor and I repainted the year before. "Thinking of putting in a fire pit here," she said casually, standing in the grass one Sunday. "Maybe even a deck if we save up. This whole space could be much more modern." "Helen planted these roses," I said quietly. "Yes, and they're half dead." It wasn't even cruelty in her voice. It was indifference, like she truly didn't see why that mattered. But the final straw didn't come until the morning I walked into the living room and saw a stranger standing on a ladder drilling into the ceiling. "Excuse me," I asked. The man looked down awkwardly. I'm just here to install the new chandelier. Chandelier. Rachel appeared with a mug of tea. Don't worry, Eugene. I got it on sale. The old light was flickering and it was time for an upgrade. This is my house, I said, keeping my tone level. She didn't even flinch. And I live here with my son. I'm doing what's best for this family. This isn't your house. She set her mug down slowly. Isn't it? There was silence, thick and choking. Even the man on the ladder seemed to hold his breath. She took a step closer. You may pay the bills, but I do everything else. I clean, I cook, I take care of Connor. I've made this house functional again. You sit in your chair and pretend it's 1980. I've given you a place to live. No, you've given us a place to suffocate. This whole house is a mausoleum. It's full of ghosts. I stared at her, shocked. Helen's not coming back, she said, her voice now soft. And neither is Daniel. You can't freeze time because you're afraid of change. I'm not afraid, I said quietly. I'm grieving. We stood there for a long time, eyes locked like two people on opposite ends of a canyon. Then she said the words I'll never forget. This house hasn't been yours for a long time, Eugene. You're just lingering. Lingering. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, the only one left from the old furniture, staring at the pale blue walls that used to be sunflower yellow. I thought of Helen. What would she do? I could almost hear her voice. You don't need a house to remember me. I'm in your heart, not your furniture. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to my old friend Jack, who worked in real estate. The second was to Lewis Patterson, a neighbor who had been asking for years if I'd ever consider selling. He still wanted the house, even offered more than market value. Are you sure, Eugene? He asked. No, I wasn't sure. But I was done being erased. I didn't tell Rachel right away, not because I was hiding it, not exactly, but because I knew the house wasn't just going to be sold. It had to be taken back first. The truth settled in slowly. I wasn't just dealing with a bad roommate. I was being edged out of my own life, Helen's life, Daniel's life. Every photograph removed, every coat discarded, every decision made without me. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was war. And I'd been surrendering 1 inch at a time. So when I sat across from Lewis Patterson at the Rusty Spoon Diner, holding a paper cup of lukewarm coffee, and he said, I'll still give you $450,000, same offer as last year. I said the words I never imagined I'd say. Let's do it. Lewis's eyebrows shot up. You're serious? I nodded. I'm ready. He didn't hesitate. I'll call my people. We can do this fast. That night I sat on the porch again. Same spot, same splintered bench. I watched the sun dip behind the trees while Connor's laughter floated faintly through the screen door. He was playing some video game in the living room, probably yelling at pixelated opponents with the passion only a teenager could summon. He was the only thing making me hesitate. If it weren't for Connor, I would have sold the place months ago. But how do you pull the floor out from under your grandson's feet, especially when he's already lost his father? I wrestled with that question the next day when I met with Mira, the realtor Helen and I had worked with when we first bought the house. She was older now, retired officially, but sharp as ever. Eugene Boyd, she said as she slid into the booth across from me at the cafe. I never thought I'd hear from you again. I didn't think I'd be calling either. Mira looked me over, really looked. You look tired. Been a long few years. She nodded, waiting. I need to sell, I said, to Lewis Patterson. She didn't ask why, just opened her notebook and started writing. We met again the next day with Lewis present. All 3 of us sat at a round table covered in papers, numbers, and bank drafts. Mira explained every step like she was reading a bedtime story, patient, thorough. I signed each page with a sense of both dread and release. Each stroke of the pen felt like sealing a chapter. The house would officially be his in less than 2 weeks. "Now comes the hard part," Mira said softly, telling them. I swallowed, yeah. When I got home that evening, Rachel was making chicken stir-fry. The house smelled like ginger and soy sauce. Connor sat at the table, hunched over a math book, pencil tapping against his cheek. "Grandpa," he said, smiling when he saw me, "help me with algebra." I nodded, sure. As I leaned over his notebook, I realized this might be one of the last nights I'd ever sit with him at that table. One of the last nights I'd walk through this house and still call it mine. Dinner was quiet. Rachel asked about my day. I gave one-word answers. She didn't press. Maybe she sensed something, maybe not. When Connor went to bed, I stayed in the kitchen. Rachel turned on the TV in the other room. I stared at the clock above the fridge, one of the only things she hadn't replaced. Tick, tick, tick. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "I sold the house." The words echoed. Rachel turned slowly, like she wasn't sure she heard me right. "What?" "I sold it. The papers are signed. We have 30 days. She stood up, her face pale. "You, what?" "I'm moving, and you'll need to move too." "Eugene, you can't just." "I can," I said. "It's my house, still is, until Lewis gets the keys." Her face hardened. "You did this because of that argument." "No," I replied. "I did it because this place is not a home anymore, not for me." Rachel stared at me for a long time. Her voice was quieter now, dead cold. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to Connor?" I nodded. "Yes, and I'll help financially, whatever he needs." She scoffed. "You're abandoning him." "No, I'm saving myself." She walked out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. That night I sat in Helen's old chair, the only thing I had dragged back into the living room from the attic before she could donate it, and stared at the blank space on the wall where our wedding photo once hung. I thought I'd feel guilty. Instead I felt light. As if, for the first time in years, I could finally breathe again. The morning after I told Rachel, the house felt strange, like a stage where everyone was waiting for the curtain to fall. The silence was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the old clock Helen bought at a flea market decades ago. Rachel barely spoke. Connor sat quietly at the kitchen table, poking at his breakfast. I watched them both, heart tight like a fist. The days passed in a blur of packing boxes, phone calls, and endless paperwork. I signed the final documents with a trembling hand. Lewis was there, smiling as if he'd just won the lottery. "You'll always be welcome here, Eugene," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you," I whispered, but inside I was a storm of relief and sorrow. That afternoon I sat alone in my chair, the sunlight fading through the window. The house was still full of memories. Helen's laughter in the kitchen, Daniel's muddy boots by the door, the quiet hum of a family that once was. But those days were gone. Rachel moved out with Connor within the 30-day deadline, leaving behind an emptiness that echoed through the halls. I moved into a small, modest apartment on Elm Street, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I decorated it with the few things I'd saved: a faded photo of Helen, a fishing trophy, and a worn-out book of poems she loved. The days felt quieter, lonelier. But I was free. Free from the constant battle over a home that no longer felt like mine. I called my old friend Gar, who offered me a place to stay while I searched for something better. "You did what you had to do," he said. "Not everyone has the strength." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The hardest part was telling Connor. I wanted him to know that even though the house was gone, I would always be there for him. Our conversations grew longer, quieter, filled with memories and promises. One day he asked, "Grandpa, can I stay with you sometimes?" I smiled through the tears. "Anytime, kid." Though Rachel was bitter, the bond between Connor and me grew stronger. a bridge over the ruins of a fractured family. The sale should have ended everything. The house was gone, the battle supposedly over, but peace was elusive. Rachel's anger didn't fade with the keys she handed over. Instead, it shifted, became a quiet storm brewing just out of sight. She challenged the sale, claiming it was unfair, that the house was still a family home and that Connor had rights. Legal letters arrived like winter snow, cold, relentless, piling up on my kitchen table. I met with Alan Prather, my lawyer, who assured me Rachel's case had no legal merit. "The house is in your name alone," he explained. "You have every right to sell it." But words don't stop a storm from brewing. Rachel disappeared with Connor for weeks, leaving only a note behind. "We're with Tanya. Don't look for us." Then a text. "Grandpa, it's me, Connor. Mom doesn't know I'm texting. I'm okay." I answered right away, relief flooding me. The boy was safe, even if his mother was lost in her own anger. Weeks passed with court hearings, lawyer calls, and tense phone conversations. Rachel's lawsuit was dismissed swiftly, but the damage lingered. Connor grew distant, torn between a mother fighting for control and a grandfather offering stability. I feared losing him, the last thread to my son, to Helen, to everything I'd ever loved. One evening, Mariah, my new neighbor and friend, sat beside me on the porch. "Maybe he just needs to make a choice," she said gently. I nodded, knowing the hardest fight was still ahead, not for a house but for family. The courtroom was a cold place, even in summer. I wore the same suit I'd worn to Daniel's funeral, the one I hadn't touched since that dark day. Rachel sat across from me, her face hardened, eyes flashing with a mix of anger and desperation. Beside her, a young lawyer in a tailored suit whispered in her ear. Judge Marks, an older woman with a piercing gaze, listened intently as both sides presented their cases. Rachel's attorney argued that the house was a family home and that Connor had inheritance rights that made the sale invalid. My lawyer, Alan, calmly explained that the deed and all legal documents named me as the sole owner and that I had every right to sell. The hearing lasted barely an hour. When the judge announced her decision, denying Rachel's motion to block the sale and dismissing the lawsuit, I felt the weight on my chest lift just a little. Rachel's face crumpled, disbelief turning to fury in seconds. She whispered curses under her breath as she left the courtroom. Outside, Alan clapped me on the back. They didn't stand a chance. But despite the legal victory, the personal battle was far from over. Rachel warned me it wasn't finished. And she meant it. Connor was caught in the middle, torn between loyalty and love, confusion and fear. I prayed I could be the rock he needed. After the court's decision, the house officially became Lewis's. He wasted no time renovating for his daughter and her family. The neighborhood changed subtly, fresh paint, new landscaping, laughter from new voices. Meanwhile, I started fresh. The small apartment on Elm Street was modest but mine. No creaky floors, no walls filled with ghosts, just a place where I could breathe again. Mariah, my former neighbor, moved back to town around the same time. We reconnected over coffee, swapping stories about life's twists and turns. She was alone too, and together we talked about loneliness and second chances. "Why don't we get a place together?" she suggested one day. Two quiet people, separate rooms, shared memories. The idea felt strange but comforting. Within weeks, we found a small house on Maple Alley. 2 bedrooms, a porch, and a garden where Mariah already planned flowers. It wasn't just a new home, it was a new chapter. Connor loved the new place. He came every weekend, sometimes staying overnight. We set up a small room for him, hung basketball posters he picked out himself. Rachel's relationship with us remained strained but civil. We talked when necessary, mostly about Connor's well-being. Life settled into a rhythm. The grief still lingered, but so did hope. And sometimes that's enough. Just when I thought the storm had passed, a new wave crashed in. Rachel had filed a lawsuit to challenge Connor's trust fund, the one I had set up from the house sale money to secure his future. She claimed I was hiding assets, denying her a rightful share. I couldn't believe it. That trust was for Connor alone, not for me, not for Rachel, only for him. The legal letters piled up again. The stress returned. I sat with Mariah late at night, reading the threats and plans. "We have to fight this," she said firmly. "You did everything right." I called my lawyer Alan. He reassured me but warned the fight might drag on. Connor was confused, caught between us and his mother's anger. One afternoon, I took him to a quiet park, hoping to explain. He told me about his fear of moving to Fargo, away from friends and school. "I want to stay here," he said quietly. My heart broke and swelled all at once. I promised him my door would always be open. The court eventually dismissed Rachel's claim, but the personal wounds ran deep. Still, every visit, every laugh, every fishing trip reminded me why I fought. For Connor, for family, for hope. Connor's return was quiet but profound. One chilly evening, the doorbell rang. There he stood, backpack slung low, eyes tired but determined. "Can I stay with you for a while?" he asked. That moment, I knew the hardest fight was over. We welcomed him in. Mariah made hot cocoa, and I told Connor he had a home always. The days that followed were filled with slow healing. Rachel's anger simmered but faded as time passed. Connor settled into his new room, posters of basketball stars taped to the walls. We fished, watched baseball, and rebuilt a bond that death and conflict couldn't sever. Sometimes, in the quiet of the porch at dusk, I'd think of Helen and Daniel, feeling their presence in the gentle breeze. Life hadn't turned out as I expected. The house was gone, but family remained. And that was more than enough. The days turned into weeks, and Connor's presence slowly filled the quiet corners of my new home. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was part of the rhythm that made this place feel alive. Watching him settle into his room, decorating it with posters of basketball players, reminded me of the treehouse I built for Daniel so many years ago, a small sanctuary where memories and hopes intertwined. Rachel's absence was palpable, yet the tension she left behind lingered like a shadow. We exchanged only the necessary words, mostly about Connor's schooling and well-being, maintaining a fragile truce for the sake of the boy caught between two worlds. Sometimes I saw her on the phone, speaking in hurried tones, her exhaustion visible in the dark circles under her eyes. I wondered what battles she fought alone, how much she missed and feared. I kept the trust fund secure, a silent promise to Connor's future, his education, his safety net. The knowledge that those funds would be there for him when he turned 21 brought a measure of peace, even if the present was unsettled. I thought often about the irony of it all, how the house that once felt like a prison had funded the chance for a fresh start. Mariah became my anchor during those turbulent months. Her quiet companionship filled the spaces that grief had hollowed out. We developed a routine, shared meals, evening talks on the porch, gardening on lazy Sunday afternoons. Her presence was comforting but never intrusive. She respected the memories I carried and never tried to replace what I had lost. Instead, she helped me build something new. Connor and I found joy in simple things: fishing by the river on weekends, watching baseball games on TV, cooking meals together. His laughter echoed through the rooms, a balm to the wounds left by loss and conflict. We talked about school, about dreams, about the future he hoped to have, a future that felt more possible with each passing day. Yet the challenges remained. Rachel's legal attempts to access the trust fund weighed heavily on us both. I explained to Connor the purpose of the fund, emphasizing that it was his safety net, not a weapon for grown-up battles. He listened carefully, his youthful innocence mingling with a maturity beyond his years. The courts ultimately sided with me, dismissing Rachel's claims, but the strain on our family was undeniable. One afternoon, after a particularly long day at school, Connor sat with me in the living room. He looked up from his homework, eyes serious. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "do you think Mom will ever understand?" I sighed. "I hope so, kid, but sometimes people need time to see things differently." He nodded, then smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're here. I feel safe." That was all I needed. Life moved forward, not without scars, but with hope threading through the fabric of our days. Rachel eventually found a new job in Fargo, traveling back and forth during the week. The distance softened her anger, and our interactions became less charged, more focused on Connor's welfare. He stayed with me on nights when his mom had to work late, and on weekends, we'd play basketball in the yard or visit the local diner for milkshakes. Each moment was a stitch in the tapestry of our renewed bond. The seasons changed, painting the town in colors both bright and somber. Spring blossoms gave way to summer's heat, followed by the crisp air of autumn and the hush of winter snow. Through it all, the small house on Maple Alley grew into a home, alive with laughter, memories, and the quiet resilience of those who choose to rebuild. Sometimes, as dusk settled and the porch light cast a soft glow, I'd sit with Mariah and Connor, watching the stars appear one by one. The past, with its pain and loss, felt distant yet honored, a chapter closed but never forgotten. Helen and Daniel were with me in every breath, in every quiet moment of peace. And though the house on Pineview Lane was no longer mine, the true home, the one built on love, forgiveness, and family, had never left. We had lost much, but gained something precious. The courage to keep going, to create new memories, and to hold each other through whatever storms lay ahead. And that was enough. Months passed, and the fragile peace we had found began to strengthen into something more solid. Connor flourished in the stability of his new routine. At school, he grew more confident, made new friends, and even joined the basketball team. Each step he took felt like a small victory, proof that despite the upheaval, life could still move forward. Rachel called less often, and when she did, her voice was softer, tinged with fatigue rather than anger. I sensed her exhaustion, not just from work but from the emotional toll of our fractured family. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if she missed the home she once tried to reshape, or if she had found a different kind of peace far away. Mariah and I continued to build our quiet life together. Our house on Maple Alley became a sanctuary, filled with the simple joys of gardening, cooking, and shared laughter. We respected each other's space and history, creating a friendship rooted in understanding rather than obligation. One day, as I was fixing a fence post in the backyard, Connor approached me, baseball glove in hand. "Grandpa," he said, eyes bright, "can we go to the river this weekend? Maybe fish like we used to." I smiled, heart warmed by the request. "Of course, kid, I was hoping you'd ask." That weekend, the sun was warm and the water sparkled under a clear blue sky. Connor cast his line with careful concentration while I sat beside him, watching the ripples dance. We didn't catch much that day, but it didn't matter. It was the time together, the quiet companionship, that made the moments precious. As the afternoon faded into evening, Connor looked up at me. "Thanks for everything, Grandpa," he said softly. I felt tears sting my eyes. Always, kid, always. Life had taken us on a winding path through loss, conflict, and heartache. But standing there by the river with my grandson, I realized we had found our way back. Not to the house we once knew, but to something stronger: family, resilience, and hope. And in that I found peace. Seasons shifted again, and with them came new challenges and quiet triumphs. Connor's teenage years unfolded with all the usual turbulence, but having a stable home and a grandfather who cared made the difference. We talked about school, his dreams, the friends he made, and sometimes the fears he held close. Rachel's visits became more frequent, though always tinged with tension. The legal battles had left scars, but over time, a fragile truce emerged. We all understood in our own ways that the past couldn't be undone, but the future was still unwritten. Mariah remained a steady presence, a friend, a confidant, and sometimes the voice of reason when I struggled with memories that refused to fade. Together, we found comfort in routine and companionship, slowly knitting a new kind of family. One crisp autumn afternoon, Connor and I walked through the park where the golden leaves carpeted the ground. He stopped and looked up at me. "Grandpa, do you think one day I'll have a home like this?" he asked, eyes wide with hope. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "I believe you will, kid. A home built on love, that's the most important part." As we continued our walk, I thought of Helen, of Daniel, and of all we'd lost. But more than that, I thought of the family we'd rebuilt, imperfect perhaps, but ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. The years rolled on, each one weaving new threads into the tapestry of our lives. Connor grew taller, his boyish face slowly sharpening into the features of a young man. His laughter still echoed through the halls of our Maple Alley home, but now it carried the weight of experience, the quiet strength born of overcoming so much. School became a world of opportunity for him. He threw himself into his studies, fueled by a desire to create a future that was different, better, than the one carved out by loss and conflict. I was there for every milestone, every report card, every nervous phone call before a big exam. I listened when he talked about college, about dreams of computer science, and how he wanted to build something meaningful with his own two hands. Rachel and I never fully mended our relationship. There was a cautious civility between us, often strained but maintained for Connor's sake. We spoke in measured tones about his education, his health, his growing independence. Occasionally, old wounds surfaced, a harsh word, a cold glance, but we never let them fracture what little we had left. Over time, she seemed to soften, the edge of bitterness dulling into reluctant acceptance. Mariah became more than a friend, she was family. We shared the quiet moments, the warm dinners, the comfortable silences on the porch swing, the shared worries about the future. Her gentle presence helped me carry the burden of grief I still felt for Helen and Daniel, and the fears I had for Connor's path ahead. Together, we rebuilt a sense of home, not defined by walls or rooms, but by the people within them. There were days when memories washed over me like a tide, the scent of Helen's lavender soap, the sound of Daniel's laughter in the yard, the creak of old floorboards that no longer existed in this new house. But instead of sinking beneath the waves, I learned to hold those memories gently, as treasures that shaped who I was, without defining who I would become. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, Connor and I sat on the porch steps, sharing a bottle of lemonade. The air was warm and filled with the hum of cicadas. He looked at me, eyes reflecting the fading light. "Grandpa," he said, voice steady but soft, "thank you for everything you've done for me, for always being here." I smiled, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "I'm proud of you, kid, more than you know." He nudged me playfully. "You're getting soft." I chuckled, the sound mixing with the gentle evening breeze. In those moments, I understood something profound. Despite the pain, despite the loss, we had forged a new kind of family. One built on resilience, love, and the quiet strength to keep moving forward. And that was a home worth fighting for. As the seasons turned and years slipped quietly by, our lives settled into a rhythm both familiar and new. Connor blossomed into a young man with a quiet determination that often reminded me of his father, steadfast, thoughtful, and surprisingly gentle despite the hardships he'd faced so young. Watching him grow, I felt a complex mix of pride, nostalgia, and a profound hope that his future would be brighter than the shadows cast by our past. School and life outside our little world called to him more and more. He took classes seriously, joining the computer club and dreaming aloud about college programs and career paths that once felt distant and abstract. I sat with him during late-night study sessions, struggling through algebra and programming languages I barely understood, but always eager to support and encourage. We talked about his dreams of making something meaningful, creating stability and security, something we both longed for. Rachel's presence remained a delicate thread woven cautiously through our lives. Our interactions were civil, often careful, with the unspoken understanding that Connor's well-being had to come before our fractured history. We communicated mostly through text or quick phone calls, sharing updates on his progress, his health, his needs. The anger of old wounds simmered beneath the surface but was tempered by necessity and the passage of time. Sometimes, I sensed in her eyes a grudging respect, a quiet acknowledgement that despite everything, I was a steadfast figure in Connor's life. Mariah was the steady heartbeat of my days. Her companionship grew from a tentative friendship into a comforting partnership, two souls intertwined not by passion or romance, but by mutual respect and the simple joy of shared life. We filled our house with laughter, warm meals, and quiet moments of understanding. She understood the ghosts that lingered in my heart and never pushed to fill the spaces left by Helen or Daniel. Instead, she helped me carry the weight of loss and find light in the present. We found joy in simple pleasures, tending to the garden, watching old movies, cooking meals that filled the house with familiar smells. Evenings on the porch, where we'd sip tea and watch the stars emerge in the velvet sky, became sacred rituals, a reminder that life in all its complexity was still beautiful and worth savoring. Memories came like gentle waves, sometimes crashing, sometimes barely noticeable. I often found myself reaching for Helen's scent in the air or recalling Daniel's laugh echoing through the halls. Rather than sinking into sorrow, I learned to hold these memories close, honoring them as part of my story, but refusing to let them define my future. One crisp autumn afternoon, Connor and I took a long walk through the park, leaves crunching underfoot, the air filled with the rich scent of earth and wood smoke. We talked about his plans, his hopes, and the future he was slowly building for himself. "Grandpa," he said, looking up with those clear, determined eyes, "do you think I'll ever have a home like this? A place where I belong?" I smiled, feeling the weight of years and love settle softly in my chest. "I know you will, kid. A home isn't just bricks and mortar, it's where you feel safe, where you're loved, and you'll carry that with you wherever you go." He grinned, the boy I once held in my arms now standing tall and sure beside me. As we walked back, the sky painted in shades of gold and crimson, I felt a deep peace, a sense that despite all we'd lost, we had found something lasting. A family not bound by walls, but by resilience, love, and the courage to keep moving forward, no matter what. And in that, we had built a home worth living in. The years kept flowing, each one bringing its own challenges and blessings, slowly knitting a new fabric of life around us. Connor's journey toward adulthood was marked by moments of growth, struggle, and discovery. He faced the usual trials of teenagehood, but with a steadfastness that belied his years. Through every test, every late-night conversation, and every quiet morning spent sipping coffee at the kitchen table, our bond deepened. He shared his hopes of college and beyond, while I tried to share what little wisdom I'd gathered, the importance of resilience, kindness, and finding strength in the face of hardship. Rachel remained a distant figure in many ways, but over time, her sharp edges softened. Our interactions became less confrontational, more pragmatic, centered around Connor's well-being. We communicated cautiously, often through text or brief phone calls, carefully navigating the remnants of past pain and misunderstanding. While the past was a heavy curtain between us, we both understood that Connor's happiness had to be the light guiding us forward. Mariah's companionship became my anchor in this evolving world. Her calm presence, the way she understood the silences I carried, and her unwavering support helped me reclaim parts of myself that I feared were lost forever. Together, we created a sanctuary, a home not just of walls and furniture, but of shared moments and quiet understanding. We celebrated small victories, a well-tended garden, a new recipe perfected, an evening spent watching the stars from the porch. Her friendship was a balm, soothing old wounds and filling empty spaces with warmth. Life's rhythm settled into a comforting cadence. We found joy in the simple and the ordinary, mornings filled with soft sunlight, the scent of fresh bread baking, the sound of laughter echoing through rooms. I learned to embrace the present, carrying the past gently like a cherished book, opening its pages with love but never letting it dictate the narrative of what was to come. One cool autumn evening, Connor and I sat on the porch steps, wrapped in sweaters against the crisp air. The world was painted in hues of amber and gold, the fading light casting long shadows that danced with the breeze. "Grandpa," he said, eyes reflecting the twilight, "do you think we're really okay now, after everything?" I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me despite the chill. "We're more than okay," I replied. "We're healing. We're building something new, stronger than before." He leaned against me, a quiet comfort in the fading day. As darkness settled, the stars began to shimmer overhead, distant, steady, unchanging. In that moment I understood. Despite loss, despite pain, we had carved out a new beginning, a family reborn from resilience and love. And that was the truest home of all. With time, the weight of the past grew lighter, like the morning mist lifting to reveal clear skies. Connor blossomed into a thoughtful, compassionate young man who carried the lessons of his upbringing with quiet dignity. He approached life with a steady heart, aware of the scars but not defined by them. Watching him mature, I found myself rediscovering hope, the kind of hope that isn't naive but forged in the fire of hardship. Our days settled into a peaceful routine. Mornings began with coffee and soft conversation. Afternoons might find us working together in the garden, laughter mingling with the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers. Evenings were for simple pleasures, a well-worn book, a classic movie, or just sitting on the porch, sharing the silence that only true comfort can bring. Rachel remained on the periphery, her visits less frequent but more measured. The bitterness that once ruled her words softened into a cautious civility, an unspoken truce for the sake of Connor's happiness. We spoke less about the past, focusing instead on what was best for him now. Mariah continued to be my steady companion, her presence a balm for the restless parts of my soul. Together, we embraced the quiet joy of companionship, two people who understood that love can take many forms, and sometimes, simply being there for each other is enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of pink and lavender, Connor and I sat on the porch steps. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and wood smoke. "Grandpa," he said softly, "thank you for everything." I squeezed his shoulder, feeling the depth of his words. "No, Connor, thank you, for reminding me what family really means." As the first stars appeared, we sat in peaceful silence, knowing that though life had tested us, we had come through stronger, bound by a love that no loss could break. And in that quiet moment, I finally felt at home. Years unfolded gently after that evening on the porch, each bringing its own quiet joys and challenges. Connor grew into a young man with a steady heart, grounded by the love and stability we had built together. His laughter, once fragile and cautious, now filled the rooms with warmth and life, a testament to resilience and hope. We shared countless simple moments, mornings with the aroma of fresh coffee, afternoons tending to the garden where flowers bloomed like promises kept, and evenings spent wrapped in blankets beneath a canopy of stars. Each day was a thread weaving a tapestry of healing, a new kind of family stitched together not by blood alone, but by unwavering love and commitment. Rachel remained a distant figure, her visits infrequent and often tinged with unresolved tension. Yet, through it all, we navigated the delicate balance of co-parenting Connor, united in our desire to see him thrive despite the fractures of the past. Conversations were careful, practical, centered on his needs and future, leaving old wounds unspoken but not forgotten. Mariah's presence was a constant source of comfort. Her gentle spirit helped fill the spaces left by loss, and together we crafted a home filled with laughter, understanding, and shared dreams. Her companionship reminded me that healing doesn't mean forgetting, but embracing the present while honoring the past. One crisp autumn day, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Connor and I walked the familiar paths of the park. He paused, looking up at me with quiet resolve. "Grandpa," he said, voice steady, "I'm ready for what's next." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. Whatever comes, we face it together. In that moment, beneath the fading light of the setting sun, I realized we had not just survived. We had found a way to live fully, with hope lighting our path forward. And that was the true meaning of home. Time flowed steadily, carrying us through seasons of change and growth. Connor stepped into adulthood with a quiet confidence that made my heart swell with pride. Each achievement, whether a good grade, a successful game, or simply a kind word, was a victory born from the trials we had endured together. Our home on Maple Alley became a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed through sunlit rooms and walls bore witness to shared stories and dreams. Mornings filled with the aroma of brewed coffee, afternoons spent tending the garden or fixing a loose fence post, and evenings wrapped in cozy blankets under the stars stitched a new fabric of belonging and peace. Rachel's presence softened over time. Though our interactions remained cautious, the hostility gave way to a respectful distance, allowing Connor's space to flourish without the shadow of conflict. We communicated with a shared purpose, supporting him as he navigated the complexities of youth and family. Mariah's steady companionship anchored me through the ebb and flow of memories and moments. Together, we cultivated not just a house, but a home filled with warmth, kindness, and acceptance. She reminded me daily that love comes in many forms, and sometimes the greatest gift is simply to be present. One crisp autumn evening, Connor and I stood watching the horizon glow with the fading light. "Grandpa," he said softly, "thank you for never giving up on me." I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight and beauty of those words. "We didn't give up on each other," I replied, "and we never will." As the first stars appeared, we stood in quiet gratitude, knowing that despite everything we had lost, we had built something lasting, rooted in love, resilience, and the promise of tomorrow. That was home. The years that followed unfolded with a quiet grace, woven from the threads of healing and hope we had nurtured together. Connor grew into a young man marked by resilience and kindness, his spirit shaped by the love and stability that surrounded him. Each milestone, his first job, graduations, and the small victories in between, became a shared triumph, a testament to the strength of the family we rebuilt. Our home on Maple Alley was no longer just a shelter. It was a refuge filled with warmth and laughter. The scent of Mariah's cooking mingled with the soft rustle of leaves outside the window, and the walls held countless memories, some new, some tinged with the echoes of the past. Evenings on the porch, wrapped in blankets beneath a star-studded sky, became cherished rituals that reminded us of how far we'd come. Rachel's presence remained a distant echo, softened over time into a cautious civility. Our conversations, while limited, were threaded with the shared hope for Connor's happiness and success. Though the wounds of the past lingered beneath the surface, we all learned to live alongside them rather than be defined by them. Mariah's companionship was a steady light in my life, a reminder that healing can bloom in unexpected places. Together, we built a life grounded not in what was lost, but in the possibilities still ahead. Her gentle strength helped me face each day with renewed courage. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, Connor and I walked through the park, talking about dreams and futures yet to come. "Grandpa," he said, eyes shining with determination, "thank you for always believing in me." I smiled, feeling a deep peace settle over my heart. "Always, kid, that's what family is for." And in that moment, beneath the vast, open sky, I knew that despite the hardships and heartbreak, we had found our way home. Time continued its quiet march forward, carrying us deeper into a life we had painstakingly rebuilt from the fragments of loss and heartache. Connor blossomed before my eyes, growing into a young man who carried both the weight of our family's struggles and the unyielding spirit to rise above them. Each accomplishment, whether it was earning a good grade, scoring a basket on the court, or simply showing kindness to a friend, felt like a victory not just for him, but for all of us who had fought to keep this family intact. Our home on Maple Alley transformed into more than just a place to live. It became a sanctuary, a living canvas of memories both old and new. The walls echoed with laughter and quiet conversations, with the clinking of dishes during dinners and the soft footsteps of someone returning after a long day. Mornings greeted us with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the gentle hum of a waking neighborhood. Afternoons were often spent in the garden, where Mariah tended her flowers with a tender care that brought color and life to the yard, reminding me that even after the harshest winters, spring always arrives. The seasons mark the passage of time, each one painting the landscape in its own colors and moods. The vibrant greens of summer gave way to the fiery reds and golds of autumn, when Connor and I would take long walks through the park, watching leaves fall like whispered reminders of change and renewal. Winter's quiet blanket of snow brought a hush over the world, inviting moments of reflection by the fireplace. Spring reawakened the earth and our spirits alike, filling the house with fresh blooms and renewed hope. Rachel's role in our lives shifted slowly over the years. Though she remained a figure on the periphery, her visits grew less fraught with tension, replaced by a cautious civility that came from shared concern for Connor's well-being. We communicated in practical ways, school updates, doctor appointments, important decisions, but left the past unspoken, allowing old wounds the space they needed to heal or at least fade into the background. Despite the lingering hurt, we found a fragile but workable truce, one that prioritized Connor's happiness and stability above all else. Mariah's presence was a constant, a beacon of warmth and understanding in a world that sometimes still felt uncertain. Her quiet strength helped fill the gaps left by loss, reminding me daily that family isn't just about who we are related to by blood, but about the people who stand by us through every trial. Together, we created a home filled with laughter, acceptance, and the comfort of companionship. Our shared routines, cooking meals, tending the garden, watching sunsets from the porch, became the gentle rhythms that steadied my soul. There were still moments when memories surfaced like waves, unexpected and sometimes overwhelming. The scent of Helen's perfume on a passing breeze, the sight of Daniel's old baseball glove tucked away in a forgotten corner, the creak of the floorboard that once echoed with footsteps long gone. But these recollections no longer chained me to the past. Instead, I held them tenderly, as cherished chapters that shaped who I was but did not confine me. One crisp autumn evening, as the sky blazed with shades of orange and purple, Connor and I sat together on the porch steps, wrapped in thick sweaters against the cooling air. The world around us was quiet except for the rustling leaves and distant calls of migrating birds. "Grandpa," Connor said softly, his voice steady despite the weight behind his words, "thank you for everything you've done, for never giving up on me." I reached over, resting a hand on his shoulder, feeling the strength in that simple gesture. "We didn't give up on each other," I replied, "and we never will." We sat in silence then, watching as the first stars pierced the twilight, a constellation of hope lighting our path forward. In that quiet moment, I felt a deep, unshakable peace. Despite the hardships, the losses, and the pain, we had forged a new kind of family, one built not just on shared blood, but on love, resilience, and the unyielding courage to move forward together. And that, I realized, was the truest meaning of home. The years that followed were a tapestry woven with threads of healing, growth, and quiet joy. Connor stepped into adulthood with a maturity beyond his years, carrying the lessons of our journey together. Each milestone he reached, graduating high school, earning a scholarship, making new friends, felt like a shared victory, a testament to the strength we'd built from pain and perseverance. Our home on Maple Alley became more than just shelter. It was a haven filled with laughter, warmth, and the hum of everyday life. The scent of Mariah's cooking often drifted through the rooms, mingling with the earthy fragrance of the garden we tended together. Sunlight spilled through windows, casting golden light on walls that now bore photographs of new memories alongside old ones. Evenings found us gathered on the porch, wrapped in blankets, sharing stories beneath a sky studded with stars. Rachel's presence, once a source of tension, softened over time. Though we never fully bridged the gap left by the past, we found a fragile truce, communicating with respect and a shared focus on Connor's well-being. The bitterness faded into understanding, or at least acceptance, as we all adjusted to new roles and realities. Mariah's companionship remained a steadfast source of comfort. Her gentle spirit helped heal wounds I thought might never close. Together, we built a life grounded not just in the absence of sorrow, but in the presence of hope and companionship. She reminded me that family can be chosen as much as given. One crisp autumn day, Connor and I walked through a park blanketed in amber leaves. He paused, turning to look at me with quiet resolve. "Grandpa," he said softly, "thank you for always believing in me." I smiled, pride and love swelling in my chest. "Always, kid, that's what family is for." In that moment, beneath the vast expanse of a fading sky, I knew we had found something precious. A home built on resilience, love, and the courage to keep moving forward, no matter what lay ahead. As the years unfolded, our lives grew richer in unexpected ways. Connor transformed from a boy carrying the weight of loss into a young man brimming with potential and hope. Each step he took toward independence was a quiet celebration. His first job, high school graduation, the beginning of college applications. Watching him navigate this new world with determination and grace brought a profound sense of fulfillment, a reminder that even the deepest wounds can heal with time and care. Our home on Maple Alley flourished alongside us. The walls, once silent witnesses to sorrow, now echoed with laughter, music, and the simple sounds of daily life. Mariah and I cultivated a garden that bloomed with every season, a living symbol of renewal and growth. Evenings were often spent on the porch, wrapped in warm blankets, sharing stories and dreams beneath a sky sprinkled with stars. Those moments of quiet connection became the threads binding us together, weaving a tapestry of love and belonging. Rachel's role in our lives settled into a new rhythm. Though the past never fully vanished, we found a way to coexist with respect and shared purpose. Our conversations were careful but sincere, focused on supporting Connor's journey and fostering his happiness. While old scars remained, they no longer dictated the present, allowing space for healing and understanding. Mariah's presence was a steady beacon of comfort and companionship. Her kindness and unwavering support helped me navigate the complexities of grief and joy, reminding me that family is shaped as much by chosen bonds as by birth. Together, we embraced the future with quiet optimism, grateful for the second chances life had granted us. One cool autumn afternoon, Connor and I wandered through the park, the ground carpeted with golden leaves. He paused, turning to me with a look of earnest gratitude. "Grandpa," he said softly, "thank you for never giving up on me." I smiled, heart full. "We never gave up on each other," I replied. As we continued walking, the crisp air filled with the scent of pine and earth, I felt a deep sense of peace. Despite the pain and challenges, we had forged a new path, one built on resilience, love, and the unwavering belief that family, in all its forms, is the greatest gift of all.